Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sci-fi, our celebration of Judaism in space. And now it's not working. It was just working.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, great. Now we're back on track. Our next mission is PowerPoint karaoke. We are still technically accepting PowerPoints, but we might not have time to vet them at this point. So if you have an idea, go ahead and submit it, but no promises that we'll be able to get it in. I should. But still, might as well submit it anyway. If we have some extra time at the end, we might be able to go through and pick those up. If you like what you see here today and you want to support Star more, you can grab a membership. So that's $10 for the remainder of this semester and all next semester, or $6 for just next semester. Comes with lots of great benefits and discounts on both merchandise and events that we run. So you'll get discounts on t-shirts, discounts into events, and we have special perks such as we will pre-order tickets for particular movies for you guys. Is anybody here wearing their Star shirt? Does not appear to be the case. It's okay. I have an example a little bit later in the presentation to show you guys about what that shirt looks like. So that shirt is $15 for non-members or $10 for a member, which means that if you have a $20 bill that's just weighing down your pocket, you can give that to us and we'll give you a membership and a t-shirt. In December 15th, we are going to see The Last Jedi at the 7 p.m. showing at Regal Henrietta. We'll be meeting at 5:30 in the SAU lobby. We are not pre-purchasing tickets for this particular movie for you guys. You'll have to go get those tickets yourself, but we will still run the free carpool that we run. Yes?
Could we be afraid of they just running out early?
This is not opening night. The movie opens on Thursday.
For Friday night, probably not.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you want to take that risk, it's up to you, but you can also just order them online or stop by the theater. The book club meets 30 minutes before the mission, right outside. They have just started reading Case of Steel, so now's an excellent time to hop in, as there's not a whole lot of catch-up work that you would have to do. So Case of Steel is by Isaac Asimov, who you may recognize as the author of iRobot. So great science fiction writer. He does a lot of really cool stuff. And if you're interested, you can go check out Book Club. PR committee. We meet Wednesday evenings right downstairs at 8 p.m. So as we have just finished up our mission posters and creating those for the rest of this semester, we've sort of transitioned over to making things for Starfest. So if you are a big fan of creating things, just like PR materials or art or design or any of that, and you have a certain flair for superhero things, definitely stop by that and give us a hand with the creation of those materials. We can always use more help. It's a great laid-back, chill environment. We have a lot of fun there. I highly recommend anyone who wants to show up, even if you're only just a little bit interested, just come see what it's about. It's a lot of fun. Speaking of Starfest, the Starfest committee, we meet Sundays at noon in the Mosaic Room, which is right down the hall there. So this is where we do a lot of more planning on Starfest as a whole. We have a lot of brainstorming sessions where we all can get a little bit of feedback on some of the really more important pressing things that we need to get running for Starfest. We also have a huge collection of subcommittees that you can join to make sure that you only have to help out in the things that you're passionate about helping out on. You don't have to do any work for the things that you don't care about. So to get more details on that, you can come to our meeting this Sunday at noon in the Mosaic Room. There you go. Here's an example of the t-shirts that we have for purchase for you guys. So again, that is $10 for members, $15 for non-members. It's got this fantastic star logo, this cool little zooming spaceship, and it says Space-Time Adventures at RIT. These shirts are made of the finest cotton that we can afford, and they will only accentuate the best parts of your figure, so it's not guaranteed. Finally, you can join us on all of our different social media platforms. We have our own website that you can check out. We have a Twitter handle you can follow. We have a YouTube page where we post all of our missions and occasionally fun shorts. Group, so you can keep up to date on all of our missions and away missions and get those handy Facebook reminders. And my personal favorite is that we have a great, awesome Slack channel for you guys to join in. You can join at chat.rtstar.com and log in with your RIT email address. We have all sorts of channels ranging everything from things that have to do with the club, like General or Starfest, to things that have to do with general, more sci-fi related things. Like we have Rick and Morty, we have Star Wars, we have Doctor Who, and this is a great way to keep on top of fandoms that you're super passionate about or things that you're more casually passionate about, because there's always really passionate people in each of these channels, and they will repost news here so you can just stay up to date with all the things that you care about. And without further ado, I will hand it over to Pillow for high five. I always do this. Here, who wants the clicker first?
Take it, I guess, because I'm starting things. I think.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So let's just get set up. I will introduce myself. Hi, I'm Noah Chernoff. I'm the Jewish Student Life Engagement Coordinator. What does that mean? I don't know either, guys. I'm a staff member. I work in the Center for Religious Life, specifically on helping meet the needs and support a dynamic Jewish life on campus. I also oversee RIT Hillel, which is the organization. We're cool. See, there we are. So, a couple quick notes. One, in that room at 8 o'clock is starting the Translated Remembrance. I'm not going to go into the details of what that is, but it's a really somber event. So we're going to ask to kind of keep the raucousness down. But just so you know, that's going to be going on. Along those lines, I will be leaving at 8 o'clock. Can you guess why? To go participate in that event. Time and my emotional state permitting, I will return to help out with the ending discussion. But it's very possible I won't be here, in which case, fine folks here have my email address. I also have an office in the Center for Religious Life. So if there are questions you have or things you want to discuss, both about this or Jewish life generally, I have an office that you can come find in the Center for Religious Life. I'm on the second floor. The student workers there are really friendly. Come say hi. I don't bite most of the time. So while we're here, Jews and faith, well, high five. So starting off there, because I'm sure someone here in this room has said Sci-fi at some point looking at that poster, at least in their head. So these two letters right here, a chet and a yud, put together, they say chai, which means life in Hebrew. So it's a good joke because it's hi-fi. It's a Hebrew word and sci-fi smashed together. Jokes are funnier when you explain them. This says Judaism 101. It is way oversimplified in a diverse culture that has existed for thousands upon thousands of years. That being said, as far as on a textual level, right, of like how do we compare to other Abrahamic religions, we are focused on the Torah and some other stuff. The Torah being the 5 books about Moses, right, and then all the prophets, and then Ketuvim, which are assorted writings, things like Job and other stuff along those lines. That probably won't come up much, but if it does, and you have questions about that, please feel free. Then the other thing to know about Judaism, it is more than a religious identity. It is also a cultural identity. It is also an ethnic identity. It's actually multiple ethnic identities, because you might know that we've been a little bit spread out over history due to this last point, right? And this is going to be a really important sticking point for tonight, which is the Jewish experience, especially the experience of the creators that we're going to focus on tonight, has been defined by trauma and reactions to that trauma. Really kind of starting with the Babylonians and going all the way to the Nazis. And, you know, white supremacy in the forms that it takes now as well, which includes Nazis still, you know. Also, sorry, quick side note, I speak really, really fast. I know that. You can ask me to slow down if you can't understand something I'm saying. I'm really excited about this stuff. I'm a big nerd, you can't tell. But because of this trauma, right, and because of this spreading and because of this kind of uncertainty of where we're going, the act of imagining a Jewish future has been a radical act, pretty much for the past 3,000 years or so. So that's a long time to think about what might be, because what's right now isn't working. And we're going to see how that kind of translates into a lot of different things. But first,
Смотрите на экран. Евреи в космосе.
Protecting the Hebrew race.
Автор-сценария, продюсер.
Surprise, Mel Brooks did that. Who else could? So, we're going to talk about some Jewish identity and representation with my favorite folks to begin with. It's going to go a little bit downhill, that's, I'm going to be perfectly honest, but let's start with the really good ones. So the X-Men, and yes, obviously, I mean, seriously, how could you not see this? So, the two creators of the X-Men, I'm so glad you all knew that. When we're talking about the X-Men, obviously we're talking about a marginalized group that is consistently oppressed by the government, and the various reactions that come out of that. Two most prolific members of that universe, of the mutants, right, of the mutants that are Jewish, Kitty Pryde and Magneto. We're going to start with Magneto, even though it's backwards there. So, hopefully you all know who Magneto is, but at his most basic level, right, we have Magneto. I know what I'm doing. So Magneto's changed a lot in lots of representations of how he would look and how he would act and all these things. But the thing that never goes away is the fact that Magneto's a Holocaust survivor. And it is foundational to his understanding of the world, right? His entire experience in life and his entire worldview is seeing the majority turn on the minority. And he turns into this violent separatist as a result of that, right? And for a lot of reasons, because of that, Magneto ends up being this really, really sympathetic villain. We're going to talk about what it means, that probably the most prolific Jewish character we have in sci-fi is like this intense violent separatist. But for now, I think the thing that to really keep in mind is he's this incredibly good representation still, right? Not a great person, but one that conveys the kind of depth of Jewish experience and kind of that trauma in a way with a lot of nuance that we don't often see. We're going to talk a lot about how little nuance we see a lot of the time. Also, in case you're curious, this slide here, these images, are from a time when Kitty Pryde and Magneto went to a Holocaust memorial together. I know. But the other big prolific character is Kitty Pryde. Kitty Pryde, who is Shadowcat, also known as, she's the one who conveys through stuff, played by Ellen Page in the movies. And she is also, as every American Jew is, affected by the Holocaust. In this context, she's the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors directly. And it really shows up frequently, right? We don't see Kitty Pryde practice Judaism pretty much ever, but we see it come up in her in the way that she approaches the world. From generally being very angry about injustice when she sees it, to specifically sometimes when she was in space and there were concentration camps, and she got very upset. And then killed all the people who were, it's a whole thing. Comics are weird. But she's also really, really great representation because she is this idea of, and this personification of kind of the burden of what Jewish identity is, right? And of what of living through, of being the descendant of trauma is, right? You know, it's not a universal thing by any stretch of the imagination. And I grew up in a family where both my parents are Jewish educators, so it happened faster for me, right? But like most like average American school kids, right, learn about the Holocaust when they're like somewhere between the ages of like 8 and 12, right? Holocaust education for me started when I was 3, because I needed to know what my friend's grandma had numbers on her arm, right? And the fact that we actually get a really nuanced representation of kind of what it means to have that with you all the time going through your life is pretty remarkable and really uncommon. The other thing to talk about with your product really interesting though is her relationship with Nightcrawler, or really a comparison with Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler is amazing, by the way, but So, may or may not know, Nightcrawler is intentionally devout Catholic, right? It shows up a lot in the movies. It shows up all the time in the comics. He became a priest for a while. He became a false pope for a little while. Then they convinced him he was the Antichrist. It was a whole thing. But so, and Kitty Pryde and Nightcrawler are like best buds most of the time, right? They went off and formed Excalibur at one point. It was a whole cool time. The one thing that's really interesting, the difference between the two of them, right, is we don't see Kitty Pryde practice, right? Which in some ways is great, right? Because having Judaism as an identity and a heritage, but not as something that you do, is a really common experience, right? And to have that nuance is really, really meaningful. But the fact that we never see anyone practice is also problematic in its own right. So it's kind of a mixed bag. Out there, I want to give a second like questions or like things that I like glazed over that you're like, hold up, what? But also before I do that, I just want to talk for a second. There is an issue of All New X-Men. It's number 13. Kitty Pryde gives a speech in that is like, it's so good. And it is about kind of this burden and like sleeve. Interesting choice of words there. But I would really recommend looking that up. I didn't put it up here because this was already here, and this was really cool. So any questions, any things that I flew over that you're like, any discussion points that kind of stick in your mind? Yeah, Laura.
Do you think that the reason why Jews are so represented in creative industries like science fiction is because telling stories kind of as a defense mechanism from the harsh realities of their actual life? Do you think there's anything in that?
Without question. And we'll get to a quote from Will Eisner that is basically him saying, yeah, that's what we were all doing. Whether or not we want to admit it, that's what we were doing. If you don't know who Eisner was, he was basically one of the big names in making comics and thing. Yes, back there.
I don't think sources like this, but I do know that for most people in Magneto, a lot of like plot lines involving him, something being like he just has like as he gets older, like usually when he's not like being forced to be like the head of like the leader he will use or something.
The Brotherhood, yeah.
Because they have to have villains for it. Thing.
Yeah.
He's usually hunting down Nazis, and he's hunting down like every Nazi across the planet that he works most of, or just hunt down them. He's only depending like trying to raise like people for that ideologies from.
Yeah. There is a plot line, I think it's called Vengeance, where it's basically him and a few other supervillains. They go around. Let me tell you. But like even in First Class, right? Like seeing the teeth, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you're lucky. But when he's torturing the guy in the bank and then he goes to Argentina and like shoots two Nazis with their own guns because he's Magneto, right? Yeah, he has a lot of built-up rage and like totally justifiable rage. But he's also the best representation we get, and that's really tricky. Because like that we can all see ourselves in Magneto is good, that we can all see ourselves in Magneto is bad. Right. Yeah, no, without question, right? But he also murders people, right? and he accepts collateral damage, right? Which is a lot of the time kind of what our justification of like what is acceptable and what is not. And whether that's a fair justification is one thing, right? But that's the one that we kind of operate on. Right? But the fact is, right, most of the time, we don't see Magneto as totally gone, right? Of all the people willing to team up with the people that he's been fighting with, he's like first in the line. I don't know the plot line well, and I don't want to like butcher it, but there's this whole thing, I think it was when Secret Wars was ending, when Magneto was just like, screw it, I'm going to save the world by myself, because no one else knows how to do it anymore. But like, yeah, it's just, would I call Magneto a villain? I don't know. Right? I think that's an interesting question. That's a question for more discussion in a little bit. But is everyone cool with what we're at so far? Yeah? Great. Moving on. Sabra exists. For some reason. So, Sabra is this Israel, Ruth Bat-Seraph, which is a ridiculous name, by the way, is this Israeli Jew. She was raised on this like special like superpower kibbutz, because of course. She is like vaguely associated with the X-Men sometimes because she's sort of a mutant sometimes. She's also a Mossad agent and now just like a random cop in Tel Aviv, which is amusing because every time that we'll do a random cut to her, it's just like a person who exists in the world. She's in Jerusalem, so she's clearly not a very good cop in Tel Aviv. She's also a fairly real, she's a rarely used character. She first shows up fighting the Hulk in some like terrible plot line where she gets lectured about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Yeah, and like she's used as a prop for like Marvel wanting to get political but not actually say anything. A lot of the times, right? So like she'll be teamed up with the Arabian Nights sometimes, who's also terrible representation, and they'll like squabble and then become best friends at the end, and then that will fall apart and then they'll squabble again later, which like is accurate in some ways, but you know is still problematic. Fun fact about Sabra though, and bear with me because this gets weird. So,
unlike everything else in comics, which is never happened.
So, two things about Sabra, two big notable things to make, right? She saves like the families of ambassadors a lot. Okay, I mean she's a cop, right, and a Secret Service agent, so it kind of makes sense. And she does a lot of like, terrorism bad. So one time, so part of Sabra's power set is that she can like give away some of her powers to like make people not dead, which is cool. But then they usually generate powers of their own. So she like found this drug addict who was dying in an alley, and was like, "I'll help you." That person turned into Windstorm and was like, "I wanted to die, so now I swear vengeance on Israel and Sabra, and I'm going to start this terrorist organization." Bad, it's because it is. And then there was this other time when, so there's this thing called the Pantheon, which is like a bunch of half Asgardian and like other random heroes, right? And they have a bunch of people work for them. For a while, this guy Achilles and also the Hulk were working for them, and they were in this team because Delphi was like, "Hey," and he's going to become the next Hitler. And then that kid happened to be the son of an ambassador to Israel, so like Sabra was assigned to like their security force when they were being attacked, and like Sabra fought the Hulk, and it sort of went okay, which you know is surprising, but like it was just bad and weird and strange. Although his dad was like meeting with Yitzhak Rabin during the time, so like it's a lot of almost trying, right? But they're not actually doing it, which is, if you're ready for that, then we're going to move on to the next slide. But any more questions about Sabra? I don't know a ton about her because she's pretty irrelevant most of the time. Yes, Hannah.
So, not that this isn't the story of being goofed every once in a while, but why exactly did someone get mad at her and therefore he told Israel?
Because she was like an Israel, like she like wears Israel literally on her top body, right? So it was like, "I will be angry at you and everyone that you stand for," and she like, for a Mossad agent, she's not great at hiding that she's working for Israel. Mossad is the Israeli Secret Service. If you're talking to a Mossad agent, you really shouldn't know. So,
An outfit like that.
oh, also the name Sabra.
You think you're talking to an X-Men.
So the name Sabra comes from like this commonly used phrase to describe Israelis, right? Which is a Sabra is this really like prickly hair thing, right? And it's like this like running joke and also kind of slang for like Israeli-born Jews, right? Because you know it's kind of like harsh and rough with everyone until you actually like sit to talk, right? The example that's always given is like if you're waiting for a bus, there's no such thing as a line, it's just a mob until someone who like needs to get onto the bus really badly comes by, and then the line splits, and then it goes back into utter chaos again, right? But she introduces herself saying, "I am Sabra, like the prickly pear that my people take their name from." Like it's just bad in so many ways. Yeah, she shares her name with the company that makes films now, so that's fun. So this is Jack Kirby. You should love him. But yeah, so there's a bunch more names that should go on that list, but those are the ones that could fit in a way that didn't look terrible. But so Jack Kirby did like the art for Marvel, just like all of it, and a good amount of the writing too. And like kind of got screwed out of a lot of the credit that he deserves. So we're gonna talk about him a good amount here. Will Eisner, who is another really, really important name in comics, and Stan Lee, you probably all know. Will Eisner was also more like business side for a long piece of that, and then would go back into writing later in life. He wrote a lot about anti-Semitism, but he didn't write about anti-Semitism while he was writing superhero comics. The whole thing, we'll get into it. So among the many things that Jack Kirby created are the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. And the Thing is Jewish. Well, okay. You saw the cover photo for the event, probably. Which we're going to talk about, because oh boy, is it bad. The Thing was often viewed as Kirby's self-insert into the Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four is a thing where Stan Lee and like Jack Kirby being like, why would anyone have a secret identity? If you have superpowers, I'd be showing it off every 5 seconds. So like this idea of like publicly facing heroes who everyone knew who they were was like really big for both of them. But yeah, so the Thing is, he's the son of immigrants, right? He had kind of a rough and tumble, youth in Brooklyn, right? Very, very similar to the way that Kirby actually experienced life as the son of immigrants, as as a Jewish immigrant, right? At a time when like you were looking a lot heavier, right, for like ethnic characteristic. It was pretty bad, and he, and through subtext for a really long time, people read the Thing as Jewish also, partially because he was Kirby self-insert and a few other small aspects of nothing going on. But in 2002, the writers made it official. There were flashbacks to his childhood, and he's like hanging out and saying the Shema, and it's a whole thing. And if you saw the cover photo for this event, which was the Thing standing in a synagogue in front of a Torah, that was the Thing's bar mitzvah, part 2, which was basically a rabbi that he knew convincing him to have a bar mitzvah for 13 years of being the Thing, which like, was a distinctly new person, right? He had to be, because you can't hide if you're the Thing. About Jewish like symbology and but we're not going to get into that right now. That's like cool, right? It's like really great. It's one of the few times that we see like outright Jewish religious practice in the comic. In that strip, the Thing is talking about Job. Do you know who's not in the Torah? Job. Job is part of the Tanakh. You would find Job in Jewish writings, right? But in this thing called the Ketuvim, which is the last book of the Tanakh, the Tanakh is actually, the word Tanakh is an abbreviation for Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, which means Torah, so the 5 books of Moses, right? Nevi'im, prophets, and the Ketuvim, a sort of writings like I mentioned earlier. So in the scroll of a Torah that you might see, like the one that's in that art, never find Job because he's not written there. So you tried almost, right? And this is we're going to get into this like, and pretended to call it effort and then didn't really make anything come out of it. Yes, I thought I go on.
If you're almost done talking about Jack Kirby, before you move on, I want to ask if you think that there was any sort of Judaism influence toward Jack Kirby's Fourth World.
Anything about Fourth World? So I can't say.
Okay.
But I'd imagine yes. So I'm going to read this quote from Will Eisner. Well, actually, it's kind of an interview. It's a little bit of a hodgepodge of a mess, but it's from this interview that that Will Eisner gave much later in life about kind of Jewish influence. But before I move on to that, the other thing that I want to say, right, is like, so in some ways, Things Jewish is also a throwaway, right? And that like it comes up like twice, and then not really much more after that. But Kirby himself wasn't terribly religious, or observant rather, right? So to say that that's a problem when it's Kirby self-insert, it's a little bit trickier. It's an attempt that doesn't hit full fruition, right? It doesn't come to be as good as we want it to be necessarily. But I want to read this quote. It's kind of long, I apologize, but it's really worth listening to. I'm going to say the word neshama a bunch. It's Hebrew for soul. This is how Will Eisner spoke when he got older. So, The superhero, this is a quote from Will Eisner, there's a couple other people that we mentioned. I don't know their full names actually, because it was something that Cordy at the synagogue that I go to put together years ago. Right? But the superhero has his origins in the folk hero. He represents an attempt to deal with forces that are considered otherwise undefeatable, and that ties in somehow with the neshama of the Jewish people. Although we may have thought we were creating Aryan characters with non-Jewish names like Bruce Wayne, Clark Kent, and my own Denny Cole, I think we were responding to the inner neshama that responds to the forces around us. Just like the story of the Golem in Jewish war, Eisner says. And if you think about it, all of Jewish cultural history has been based around Jewish cultural fighters, like Samson and David. Now, in the 40s, we are facing the Nazis, an apparently unstoppable force. And what better way to deal with a supervillain like Hitler than with a superhero? This is not a quote. Regardless of how Jewish the underlying themes of the comic books may have been, until very recently, outwardly Jewish characters have been all but non-existent. Most of us at the time were trying to pass. That was the thing to do. As a rule, we tended to keep our culture out of our work. You just didn't go around creating Jewish heroes, right? The pressures of existing in America in the 40s, right? And it wasn't just for Jewish culture, right? It was for every immigrant population, right? Assimilation beats our identity out of you in a lot of ways, right? But like, you can't tell me that Captain America wasn't a Jewish power fantasy. Who was everything that is good in the world, punching Hitler in the face over and over and over again, right? Like, you know what I mean? So yeah, that is my piece for right now. I'm gonna hand things over to Emily to talk about the one and only Mel Brooks.
Okay, so I feel like I should introduce myself so it's not just like some random person talking to you. So I'm Emily Letterman. I am a second year here and I'm on the board for Hillel now, so I am the public relations director. I guess that's my role. So anyway, I'm also wearing a shirt that says Hillel on it, so this is Hebrew in case you were wondering. So anyway, so this is Mel Brooks. In case you remember the Jews in Space thing, he's responsible for that, and it's, you know, it's kind of cool, right? So he's very, very unapologetically Jewish. Like so he was born, I believe, in Brooklyn, 1930s, to Jewish parents. Yeah. So and now I mean he's in his 90s, but yeah. So he had that experience of growing up in Brooklyn to, like, you know, Jewish parents, Holocaust survivors, and that really
not Holocaust survivors. Holocaust.
Okay. Sorry, my bad. But anyway, so, like, you know, that's a big part of his identity, right? And so he put in, like, you know, I was like reading up on him, and he put in his quote. He said, like, I'm spectacular Jewish, like, and you know, he's just very, very unapologetic about it. And he ended up. Oh yeah, this is before the war. So he literally, like, he went to war, and he literally, like, fought the Nazis, right? Like, he went to Germany to fight in the war. And so again, this is a huge influence on his work, like Jews in Space, like literally. And yeah. So, and he just produced a lot of things. And
Spaceballs, you know,
Spaceballs.
some sci-fi that you might appreciate. As kind of, right, so.
He did Young Frankenstein.
Young Frankenstein, notoriously the producers. Right, and if you want to talk about why, the thing with Mel Brooks, right, is he also understood the value of Jewish representation, but also minority representation broadly. Well, understanding still, I think, like, down, right, in this comedy, which is a concept basically saying that if you are a member of the class in power, making jokes about people below you doesn't work, right? If you're punching up, right? If you're going after the people who are, you know, in power, causing problems, the oppressors, right? Good to go. Also, when people on the internet are like, I can satirize Nazis because Mel Brooks did it, right? No, because you're not Mel Brooks, right?
You do not have the same experience as him. Like, again, literally fought Nazis. Like, I mean, you know, like, it's just whatever he wants. Like, he's like the ultimate Jewish experience, right? Like, I mean, you can't do it. Don't do it. So, yeah, cool. Now it's that.
All right.
Yes.
I haven't introduced myself. If you're in Star, you probably know me. I'm Zachary. I am heavily involved in Star.
You don't say.
So we've talked a lot about like how Jewish identity actually appears in stuff. And then we sort of move on to, well, it kind of showed up, but if you blink, you'll miss it. These are 3 examples. If you don't know, that's from left to right, that's Martin Stein, one half of the 2 people who fuse into one superhero, Firestorm from DC Comics. That's Agent Mulder from the X-Files, and this is Mr. Universe from Serenity, or the Firefly universe. Jewish. If you didn't hear that, like, 1 or 2 lines in Legends of Tomorrow, then you don't know that he's Jewish. Ava, can I tag you into talking about Mulder? Because you know way more about X-Files than I do.
I watched a lot of X-Files even when it got bad. I got attached. So Agent Fox Mulder is not confirmed to be Jewish, but there are a couple episodes where it is mentioned, usually as a very Christian person trying to attack Mulder and make him feel bad, which doesn't work because Mulder doesn't care. People have been calling him crazy for years. So you think he's gonna care if you call him Jewish? He doesn't care. But also, like, they're like, oh, I can tell you are Jewish because of your last name and your nose. And he's just like he doesn't confirm, he doesn't deny. And so it leaves any Jew who's watching going, please just say yes. Please give me something.
Additionally, David Duchovny, the actor who plays him, is actually half Jewish. I think his father's Jewish. So there is that too.
Yeah, and Mr. Universe is so blinky you'll miss it. It's not even like confirm it, but if you look at his wedding photo from Serenity, you can see he's wearing a yarmulke and stepping on the glass, which is part of the Jewish wedding ceremony. So he is in universe Jewish, but you really have to look for it. And this is a common trend, and it's not unique to Judaism, but for an issue with a lot of representation, especially Jewish representation across various media, is like the company's PR departments will go like, look, we have diversity, so-and-so is technically Jewish, but it doesn't actually inform the character's the character in any way. You don't feel it so much in the character's actions. The character certainly doesn't actively practice or talk about it, because that would be way too obvious. And so it kind of, as Ava said, leaves the Jewish audience going, okay, but like, could you say anything? Yeah.
Also in terms of X-Files, like, you get the please just say something, because you have the 2 main characters, Scully and Mulder. And Scully, a huge part of her character is like her faith or her lack of faith. She always wears a cross, and she's very conflicted about like dealing with her Christian family and dealing with like her Christian values, even though she doesn't really believe in it because she's the skeptic character and Mulder is the believer character. But they explore her religious identity so much, and it's so dynamic that you're going, please just, Mulder, please say something. Just light a menorah, have a mezuzah.
Yeah, it kind of ties a little bit with what Nora was talking about, Kitty Pryde and Nightcrawler, where like one's Jewish and one's Christian, but the Christian one gets to talk about it all the time. Same with Martin Stein was in Flash, and it, like I said, it was 1 or 2 like lines that if you happen to look away, you'll never even know. Whereas in a recent episode of Flash, some characters go to church, and it's just, and the show just treats it like, yeah, of course it. Wait, do you thought it was a big deal that they're Christian? Yeah.
Isn't it because most of the demographics of the writers actually showing money, like old Italy point of views? Like,
I can jump in here real quick. Sort of. On a like shoveling money in, yeah, kind of. On a writing level, no. Because most of the people who built PC were Jewish. The Flash maybe not so much, right? But like, right, so like, for example, right, there's this concept, quoting the West Wing, because that's the other thing that I know a lot about, this idea of being good for all time zones, right? It's less the people making the thing and more the audiences they're concerned about, right? The wanting to make sure that your thing has broad appeal and that you'll get advertisers on it hurts art in a whole host of ways that are not limited to Jewish representation, but Jewish representation is one thing that's sacrificed there a lot of the time, right? So, like, for example, David Krumholtz, I love David Krumholtz. He has never played a character that isn't Jewish in his life. And like, reasons for that, but they'll always, but like, this is a word that I'm about to use that you should not use yourselves, but the concept of being too Jewy is definitely a real thing, right? So like, you can't give me a name like Barton Stein, right, and tell me that person probably isn't Jewish, but also, you're not going to do it because you're going to create conflict out of nowhere, right, for no reason. Because giving minorities, right, most of the time, seeing themselves isn't seen as more valuable than like keeping eyes on the thing that you're making. Time true thing, but a lot of the time it's a true thing. And because of that, right, when we're talking about Jews, I don't want to make comparisons here because the differences are so vast, right? When we're talking about Jewish representation, it's a lot of the time easier to compare it to looking at and like what that means for sci-fi, right? Compared to like Afrofuturism, right? And looking for LGBT representation, right? Rather than looking for religious representation necessarily, right? Because A, so much of the identity goes beyond religious practice, and B, what the experiences meant are so different, right? Not that if you're a religious Christian that you don't carry that with you throughout your day, right? But like, one way or the other, right, when you're Jewish, even if you decide it doesn't matter to you, people can decide that it matters to them that you are, right? So the control of that narrative being lost is a really big issue. That's my piece.
All right, and so next we're moving from these characters who like blink and you'll miss it to the Jewish presence just isn't even on screen. I mean, yeah, guys, get it? Get it?
It's funny.
Like much like when we talked earlier when Jack Kirby was writing the thing, he never made the thing blatantly Jewish. That was a later decision to give the thing a bar mitzvah. So you have this Jewish writer writing a character who is maybe Jewish in subtext, but never blatantly Jewish. And this shows up in other fandoms as well, such as if you can just barely see through the subtext.
Can we just slow down for 1 second?
Yes.
So I have to leave in about 3 minutes, so I want to give a chance for just questions that you have for me or about anything that I spoke about really quickly before I run. I'm going to try and come back, but I don't know if I'll be able to. Also, this is fun. So any questions, anything at all? No? Bueller? References. Okay, cool. Do you want to do this one or do you want me to?
I mean, you can say it.
Cool. All right. So, Superman's real name?
Kal-El.
What does Kal-El mean?
Something hope.
That.
Does it mean voice of God?
It does mean voice of God. Can anyone guess in what language it might mean voice of God? I'm gonna say Greek. Yeah, it does. Now, I want you to think of a figure from like religious text, right? One who where the life of their people is being endangered.
Moses.
Yeah, but you stole my thunder, so I'm gonna keep going and pretend. Right, where people, where they literally put him in a basket and send him away. Yeah, it's a Moses metaphor, guys. The person who's going to go save all the people being sent away from the family that he had to be able to live on and continue to do the thing. Yes. I'm saying yes now. Because I have the power. But can we guess who Superman is most likely made allegories to most of the time?
Man of Steel. Seriously, like, you just turn up the subtext volume just like one click, and he's just going, I am Jesus, I am Jesus. Shout out to anyone who got the nostalgia critic reference. But like, seriously, everyone thinks he's Jesus.
So I'm going to read this last quote, and then I'm going to run. But so there's this great book. It's called The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. It is by Michael Chabon, who is like one of the premier Jewish authors of these days. It's phenomenal. This is a fictionalized telling of like these two guys trying to make it in the comic industry, right at the time that we're talking about like Jack Kirby and Eliza. Yeah. So listen to this. They're all Jewish superheroes. Superman, you don't think he's Jewish? Coming over from the old country, changing his name like that. Clark Kent, only a Jew would pick that name for himself. Yeah, so with that, I'm going to say, and pass things back over to these two fine folks. Thank
Cool. So yeah.
Don't tell her that.
It's good to introduce the proper interviews they're expecting people to come. So yeah, if anyone asks, like, Superman and a lot of superheroes are like, they're not all just Jesus, and I don't know how Man of Steel people didn't see that this is clearly Moses' metaphor. Anyway, I'm handing it off to Emily to talk about. Oh wait, no, slides are not in the order that.
I totally called us when we watched that episode a couple
All right, sorry.
No.
You were.
Yeah.
There. There's the
Okay,
story.
there we go. So, okay, cool. So I went to high school in West Virginia, right? And so I was kind of, looking up things, I don't know, and then I figured out that one of the writers for Star Wars, Lawrence Kasdan, went to my high school, and I was really excited about it. So then I started looking into him more, and then I was like, raised in a Jewish family, and I was like, that's really interesting, because I mean, this guy is like, he's right up there with like George Lucas, right, in terms of like amount of writing influence. So I was like, that's really interesting. So anyway, so I looked into it and I found this thing that was like, hidden meaning of Star Wars, or hidden Jewish meaning in Star Wars, right? So I was like, that's something really cool. That Yoda to Yamaka has nothing to do with it. It's a very interesting image that I found on Google that I figured might be appropriate. So so apparently a lot of the cast members in Star Wars are Jewish, such as Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher, Jewish. So, and then, and so there was a lot of things. So, like the Force, for example, they were writing, the Force is kind of like a representation of its boat, and in Jewish culture, that's kind of like, doing good deeds and the power of the universe, all that. So, I mean, it's not like a lot, but it is there. There was also mention of, there was something on like Darth Vader's like outfit in Hebrew, and it was upside down, and you could turn it up, and it was like a message. I don't really know, like, honestly. But I mean, and again, it's very, very subtle, but it is there, and so that is something. Yeah, I mean, it was really noticeable, right? Because like Star Wars is awesome, and there's no one else. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. So one of the other stars in the Star fandom. Sorry, we don't have slides for Gate, Fox, whichever other stars I'm missing. But Star Trek. So a ton of Jews worked on this. You probably at least know about William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, and like how a lot of Vulcan symbols, most notably the live long and prosper gesture, come from Judaism. This symbol comes from Jewish Kohanim.
What's a Kohanim?
Like ancient, like Jewish priests class. But also some of the producers, including Michael Piller and Rick Berman, who, if you've watched enough of the later Star Trek series, you've probably seen their names flash at the end of every episode. And a ton of writers were also Jewish, so it's not just Leonard Nimoy improvising on set. And also there's sort of a discussion about if you're in these sections of Star Trek fandom online about, well, is Worf technically Jewish because his parents are, his foster parents rather, are canonically Jewish, which is kind of an interesting story how that happened because Michael Piller and Rick Berman had written them as more explicitly Jewish, and then before they shot the episode, they later edits in the script were let's make them not so blatantly Jewish. So then it turned it from what could have been a set of explicitly Jewish characters that we could have talked about earlier on, went straight past the blinking illicit into this sort of yet another of these not really visible influences in Star Trek, which leaves a lot of the Judaism in Star Trek in the category of what we've been talking about before. The themes are there, but the characters are less so, unless you start going into the extended universe, because I know there are some characters in the novels and the more recent stuff tying into Discovery. Yeah, Michael.
I'm always confused about religion in general in Star Trek, because I thought the part of the point you're making was that the Federation was, at the very least, a very secularistic society. They no longer believe in superstition, and Picard goes on to imply that there is no religion in the Federation, or at least religion is greatly diminished.
So, yes and no. That's actually an interesting point. So, for one thing, there still is, religions exist in the Federation, because we hear a lot about the Klingon mythology, the point where in Voyager we even see a depiction of Brethor, which is the Klingon hell. Whether or not that's actually they don't focus on, is this only the Vulcans really care about what is actually provable. You still have species like the Klingons who still have religions. And even in the secular society, a lot of the traditions live on, but separated from their original religious roots. So for instance, when Picard goes into the Nexus in Star Trek Generations, does anyone care about spoilers for any Star Trek? It was 50 years ago. Okay, Generations wasn't, but Old Trek was. It was still 30 years ago. In Generations, Picard goes into the Nexus. The Nexus constructs a perfect reality for Picard based on his childhood memories, and it's Christmas time. And while you don't see explicitly tying into the most religious aspects of Christmas, they still have the common Christmas symbols. They have a tree, they have lights, they have wreaths. And they're exchanging presents that are under the tree, and having a traditional family Christmas dinner. So even if not all of the religious roots are explicitly referenced, the traditions of other religions, of other Earth religions, live on, and other species have their religions, have at least one religion for each species, and sometimes more live on. So then you start going, as a Jew, so why aren't we there?
I want to jump into something real quick and then have a question. The other thing to consider with that, right, is the prospect, right, of my identity no longer existing because it's the future and because we're more logical or we have changed our values, right, is actually a real threat sometimes. It's just future assimilations, right? Which is not to say that there's not value in
being able to like move past certain things that hold us up and create conflict, right? But like my connection to Judaism is not a fault in logic, right? It's not a fault in it's not a superstition, right? It is built in on the human level. Yeah.
Okay, so there's one episode in the original series that really bugs me, especially considering the fact Leonard Nimoy Chandler, which is what the hell is going on in that Son of God, the episode that ends with the Son of God thing.
I'm trying to remember what episode that
You
was.
looked up the name of it.
It's Bread and Circus.
Oh,
That episode is just weird.
What the hell is going on there?
I'm sorry, I don't remember that episode.
Bread and Circuses is the one with the Roman Colosseum thing, but it's on TV, right?
Yes, and there's like a little cult that's being oppressed. They think that they're worshiping a sun god, but that turns out it's the son of God. And then they realize that once they're back aboard the ship, and they're all smiling and really happy because the Jesus or whatnot.
Thanks, Star Trek, for making Sabra seem normal.
Whatever. We named after a type of
So
communist, so
upsetting.
not great.
So I'm trying to refresh my memory by just scanning the synopsis, and I do not remember this episode.
You're probably intentionally suppressing me.
I mean,
pretty bad.
Also,
It's another
like when I rewatch Star Trek, I rewatch the episodes I like, so that's probably why I never went back to it. Like I'm recalling bits of it, but I don't remember the ending at all.
Like the last one was kind of weird, but I learned that like part of it was specifically Leonard Nimoy's idea, and like that. I'm sorry, Art. I have strong feelings.
It was pretty bad. Let's just leave it there.
I mean, there on one hand, yes, if it's as more Christian-centric as it sounds like it is, it seems like it is from just skimming this, then that could be another product of the it's okay to talk about Christianity but not other religions for some reason, not other real human religions. We can talk about Vulcan and Klingon mythology all we want, that's fine. It took until Voyager to get any, forget about good, any representation of like Native American culture in Star Trek. And even then, it was still not always great. Like, I mean, like some of the stuff we were talking about earlier, it was like, their hearts were in the right places, but like, they didn't quite hit the mark.
But then they changed the canon of the entire, like, origin of their religious system?
Yeah, it was not great. It was weird.
Aliens?
All right. Third.
Subtext.
All right. So yeah, this all comes. Do you want to? Yeah, because this all comes back to subtext because some of these well, this person's like technically arguably Jewish, seem like stretches, but like when there aren't explicitly Jewish characters present in someone's vision of the future, then it's like, okay, so you either need to try to find yourself in there or assume that you were either like eliminated or completely assimilated.
So when you're not valued enough to be text, then that's all you have left, right? And sometimes it is, and sometimes it is just oversight, and sometimes it's intentional. Either way, it's not a great situation to be stuck in, right? And this goes into a lot of different things, right? You know, the reading of Kal-El as a Moses figure, right? Superman isn't that much of a stretch, but it is still a stretch, right? That subtext seems like you might be reaching there a little bit, right? But making Superman a Christ figure every 5.5 minutes, no, that's fine, right? And this is the way that we see in kind of just cultural dominance like play in all these really ugly ways. You also see that sometimes looking at anti-Semitic portrayals that happen, right? A lot of those also end up being kind of a stretch, right? The other Jewish character to show up in Firefly, it's the guy who owns the post office that Mal's friend is shipped to.
Oh, right.
He is wearing a yarmulke, which is like, okay, well, glad that the sniveling coward is the Jewish representation we get in your show, right? And mind you, anyone probably, right, when you have like the Alliance knocking on your door is like a sniveling coward, that's fine. But we don't get it now also, right? We don't get the hero to also be the counteracting point of that.
Like a throwaway line that is like not in the script, but if you listen for it, you can hear it where, yeah, I know. But it's not super legit, it's just really funny. At the end of that Firefly episode where Mal is naked in the desert, but they find him so good, there is a line where Wash walks by, and then he walks off screen, and if you listen for it, you can hear him, and he goes, I didn't know Mal was Jewish. And that's it. It is heart-stopping.
Alan Tudyk never changed.
You'll hear it if you listen for it, but if you listen for it, you'll hear it.
Well, I know what I'm doing today.
Oh my god.
But again, it's not explicit representation.
It's joke.
We know the state of Malcolm Reynolds' penis, and from that can maybe guess at why. But it's like, is that really, that's the best they can do?
Apparently.
That was a phrase I wasn't expecting to hear. So, the other thing, I think that was our subject.
Yeah, unless you want to say.
Yeah, so it's
just, can just bring it back into.
So, long story short, and not to sound like a broken record, representation matters. It matters a whole heck of a lot. You want to be able to see yourself represented in the future. It's really important. Sci-fi is boundless, right? Like, it is, like, yes, there is, like, good scientifically accurate sci-fi, but it's still, the fi is always in there, right? It's still fiction. Right? And there's a reason that future fantasy as a genre exists, right? It's because we want to be able to say the future can be whatever we want it to be. That's a freeing idea. So why don't we see certain people in those futures, right? And if it's oversight or extermination, they're not good enough, right? So like, this gets even more complicated. There were so many Jewish voices making these things, right? And they don't get to be able to see themselves. Right? Is that, you know, kind of what was brought up earlier, right? The conflicts of like studios trying to like and make sure that certain things in certain ways, or is it kind of a cultural heritage of like seeing ourselves as lesser than that we have to get over, right? There's a lot of layers to that aren't quite clear either. You know, when we do see Jewish characters, right? Very rarely are they the hero, right? They might not be the villain, right? They might not be Magneto, right? But most of the time, they're not the ones who win, right? Or they're a side character, right? And I'm not saying that every piece of media that doesn't have like good Jewish representation is now trash and you should throw it away. That'd be ridiculous. But I mean, you can try it if you want, but you'll be very bored for the rest of your life, right? Because let me tell you, the Torah is a great Jewish representation. But we get to this point, right, of like Steve Rogers, right, is a Jewish power fantasy, right? But Steve Rogers isn't Jewish. Right? When are we going to see ourselves kind of in that point of being the one punching Hitler in the face, right? This also kind of ties into, right, this idea of sci-fi is also really built into communities in a lot of ways, though. Where this idea of imagining the future, kind of like I mentioned at the beginning, Right? It comes in a couple of different ways, right? For one, there's this concept in Judaism called the door by door, right? From generation to generation. There's a Star Trek pun there that I won't make, but now you're all thinking about it. So, right, this idea that the experiences in Jewish knowledge will be passed down, right? That our understandings will grow as time progresses, right? But that includes our art, right? The thing that I see now, right, that Jack Kirby made 70 years ago, right, influences my understanding of the world, right? And the things that he was imagining in the future during those times, right? It's really like tension of what was possible, right? Like our obsession with automation is because people talked about robots, right, before they were even conceivable, right? And then we were like, oh, we need that now, right? Shout out to the Golem and its influence on the genres around automation. It's also Jewish folklore, fun facts. But yeah, so there's also this idea of responsibility to the future, right? So we want to create these really nice idealized futures where like we're working hard. That's not a uniquely Jewish thing, obviously, but it's a defining Jewish thing, right? The burden for this idea called tikkun olam, for repairing the world, is placed squarely with on Jewish identity, right? Not exclusively, but definitely, right? And that gets furthered by the actual, not just on a textual level, but on an actual lived experience level of being the descendants of the Holocaust, being the descendants of the Spanish Inquisition, right? Being the descendants of constant expulsion and abuse, and taking a stand saying not anymore, right? Also, Jews have been making up random stuff for a really long time because Midrash. If you haven't heard the word Midrash before, it's my favorite. Because the best way I can describe it, that's not true. The most fun way I can describe it is as Jewish rabbinic fan fiction.
That's pretty much entirely accurate.
Yeah, so it is the rabbis and it's Jews themselves on every level, thinking about the text that we have and looking for and trying to find the holes in it and trying to fill in those gaps, right? But it is not just backward looking, right? It is necessarily forward looking. Because the reason that we go back and try to figure out what was missing is so that we can go forward, having a better idea of what's going on, right? This question of what if is a question that every Jew has asked at some point, right? And it's a question that every sci-fi writer has asked. So there's, I think that is all we got, unless you guys want to add something.
No, I think that's a perfect segue into question.
So I'm going to do two quick plugs before we actually start the discussion properly, because I have to run, I'm guessing, which are Saturday, December 2nd, so the Saturday after Thanksgiving, is our Not Quite Hanukkah party. It will be in Gleason A055, which is the room under the Gleason residential building in the tunnels. Everyone has access to be able to get there, do not worry. It's going to be super fun. Come play competitive dreidel. It gets really nice.
Hundreds of lagos come meet them.
Yeah, it'll be a really good time. Hillel meets every week. You can ask Jonathan or Emily or any of the people basically in that row for details on it. And my office is on the second floor of the religious life. If you have any questions, please come feel free to see me. I'm going to run. You probably will be gone by the time I get back. So, good night.
So, so just kind of building on what Nora said, we have Shabbat services every week from 6 to 7, and then we have something cool after. So last week got Thanksgiving Shabbat, and next week will be
The one after Thanksgiving, we're going to the wellness center to play board games.
Yeah, so it's super fun, even if you're not Jewish or you're not observant or whatever, like, I think people enjoy it, so. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, back to this. As Nora said, in Judaism, in Midrash, there's a lot of focus on what-if questions to open room for discussion and imagination, and that was a great segue back into connecting Judaism and sci-fi. So, we definitely want to open the floor to questions or things you guys want to discuss, or if not, we can talk about more stuff that we find interesting.
All right.
Something else.
That wasn't for me. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so Futurama, right? So it's like really awesome. It's like the best show. And so there's actually a lot of like Jewish references in there. And like I don't know if you guys have noticed them, but for example, like I know when they were all in the slurm factory, you know, like one of the characters, Dr. Zoidberg, has a shirt that says slurm in it in Hebrew. And they also have like they have this like whole like, you know, like seasonal like holiday episode, and they have like Robotica, and they have this whole like song and dance thing about it, and they just in like at some point like they all say like Mazel Tov to each other, right? So there's just a lot of like little things in there, and I mean like and I don't like I notice them if I watch them, but like it's just interesting to think about like in Futurama and in other shows, just thinking okay like where you know where's because like you may not notice it, but it's probably there. So yeah. It's really quiet. You guys are like dying.
You need more food. There's still some food in the back.
Yeah.
More color. Yeah.
So I never looked up David Krumholtz. I just knew that he was Jewish. But oh my God, he's in the Addams Family Values. He's Joel, who is a very Jewish character. But also, he was not Jewish in a thing once. Do you guys remember that Tim Allen Santa Claus movie? He was the head elf. One time.
Well, is the elf canonically not Jewish? Maybe he's Jewish, and that's why he works on Christmas.
Oh my goodness, I just didn't realize how many things he was in. Addams Family is incredible, and I'm excited, and I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Oh my God.
All right. Okay, so here's another thing that was like on my mind a lot. I think this kind of spinning off the earlier talk about Mel Brooks is like comedic representation of Jews, which like, as we kind of touched on, there's kind of this line between like the comedic representation of Jews like you get with Mel Brooks and just bad representation like you get with a lot of people who think they're Mel Brooks. Then you can kind of, that led me to, is anyone here familiar with the Thrilling Adventure Hour? Besides people who've just heard me talk about It's a Thing I Like.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a podcast. They have several sub-series within it, including their main sci-fi series, Sparks Nevada, Marshall on Mars. Spin-off involving various characters. It's like a space western, mostly set on Mars, and then spin-offs elsewhere in the solar system. The barkeep on Mars, you might have seen in our trivia presentation at the start, is space Jewish. As is another character in the spin-off who's like mentioned it once, but and that kind of leads to there is sort of a smaller trend of like Judaism in fiction, including science fiction, as the sort of like go-to alternate religion for like, especially for like Christian writers who are like, I know enough about this like sort of thing, and I know that they have some of the same religious texts that I do, so I'm going to make Judaism religion for the people who are not the standard religion, and that can kind of get you some good things like really offensive about the Jewish presence in Sparks Nevada. It's not really prevalent, but like it's at least something that acknowledges like during when they had like annual-ish holiday episodes that they're not just all celebrating Christmas. On the other hand, you also run the risk of slipping into the well, among other things, either cases like Sabra that are a bit problematic, or cases of the people who are trying and failing to be Mel Brooks and just come off as like kind of offensive. But it is cool that in universes where religion isn't particularly prevalent, people are willing to include Jews in, are more willing to include Jews in some capacity. It's not great, but something. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, someone else. I should have written.
Okay, 1 then 2.
Okay. Something I just remembered, when talking about like the people who it's sort of subtext but not really there. The show Gravity Falls. The head writer, Alex Hirsch.
Yeah.
And his family is Jewish. And it is a very not a secret that the twins in the show are him and his sister, basically. So a lot of people ask him if Dipper and Mabel, and by extensions Stan, are Jewish, and he kept like pushing it off and like not wanting to say one way or the other. But a lot of people try to see it that way because they know that it's written as him and his sister.
I watched that entire series and did not realize that they were like.
It's only if you like know about him. Like,
yeah, I didn't know a lot about
that.
That's cool. That's interesting.
No, it's really obvious. Like once you see it, like you can't stop seeing it.
I just don't know a lot about him personally, which is why I wasn't looking for it. But yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Just to go back to the like comedic Jewish representation in shows by Christian authors, I actually think that I've always thought it was kind of a double-edged sword, because while it's obviously good that Jews are being represented, it's also kind of a problem, because I think it kind of notion that Jews are better represented or more like Christians than they actually are. Like, people who've said things like, the 3 biggest religions in the world are whatever, and they mean Judaism, and they mean Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, not Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism, because they think that Judaism and Christianity are functionally the same. So that's a problem in itself. The representation's good, but there are unintended consequences.
Yeah.
I all take a moment to groan about the term Judeo-Christian.
Exactly my point.
Wait, what?
I all take a moment to groan about the term Judeo-Christian.
But thank you for saying the term double-edged sword, because that was the thing that I couldn't pull up in my brain when I was talking about that. So that's a really good way to summarize what I said in way too many more words. That you get representation, but like I said, it's sort of, they just treat it as this is another religion I've heard of, and I think it's similar enough to mine that I can write about it. Yeah, and then that gets into a whole separate issue about like lack of Hindu representation, or lack of, well, if not lack of Muslim representation, lack of good Muslim representation, and that's full of it. Yes.
Just another thing, like just because you mentioned that, it's actually really interesting. Like I think in a lot of things, like even like Futurama, right? Like they're like, okay, there's Hanukkah, but Hanukkah isn't that big of a holiday in comparison to like Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, and like all the other things. So like I don't know, I feel like a lot of the times they'll be like, okay, we're going to do a holiday episode, Hanukkah. I mean, that's something to consider too, I think, like, when you think about like Jewish representation and like whether it's good, whether it's bad, like,
yeah.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's also just like.
I mean, I think that's just a function of it just lines up. It's like the closest, at least like calendar wise to Christmas. And like, that's probably part of the reason why most of the other religions aren't represented at all, is most of them don't really have holidays around that time.
Well, and some are represented, but also that's something that I see, but like in my mind, I find kind of, I'm not sure how I feel about it, because on one hand, like Hanukkah is not as big a deal in Judaism as like Christmas is in Christianity, but it's not necessarily like false representation to have characters treated like it's a bigger deal than it is, because we do that in real life because it falls so close to Christmas, and then companies in real life see it as the go-to like non-Christian other holiday we can give a shout out to, and that makes it a bigger deal than it is than it necessarily would otherwise be in real life. So then, is it kind of accurate representation because it reflects our lives today?
Right. Place I find a Hanukkah shell. in the holiday aisle.
The Hanukkah shelf in Target is up. I think
Oh,
it's
yeah.
4 aisles further from the entrance than it was last year, but it's there.
The one at Michael's is actually pretty good. It's still a shelf, but it's actually pretty good.
Oh yeah, I forgot, I was gonna, as a joke to the event, I took a picture. Target has out the mensch on a bench in addition to the elf on a shelf. I'll try to remember to post it to the Facebook event after the mission. It sure exists. They are selling. Well, they have it on the shelf to theoretically be purchased.
For the $100 means it hasn't like died.
Yeah, I shouldn't say they're selling them, because I don't know if they're actually selling them.
They are available for purchase.
They're available for Christians who don't know better to buy from their Jewish friends.
Yeah, pretty much.
I don't know, I think I've already mentioned that will probably laugh, so.
I would be amused. So what am I going to do with this?
That's true.
Anyway, yeah.
It was pretty much similar to what you were saying, and then like, TV shows and stuff are like, oh man, we want to do a Christmas themed episode, so we have to mention Hanukkah. And so it's like it's not always a forced thing, but it's definitely we wanted to talk about Christmas, so we're going to mention Hanukkah, because that doesn't happen with holidays from other religions. Like, they're not going to have an episode dedicated to Passover unless it's Rugrats. Yeah, but also, like, other religious holidays are usually only covered if they align with something that talk about.
I mean, even then, I don't think I've ever seen an Easter special that mentioned Pesach. Like,
a lot.
Are there?
A lot, yeah.
like it's nowhere near as common as Christmas specials, but they exist. Whereas, aside from Rugrats, I can't think of like, I'm not sure I can even think of a show that is not like explicitly Jewish that has mentioned Pesach.
I know Arthur mentioned Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur.
Yeah, oh my God.
I don't remember that, but also I haven't seen Arthur more than a decade.
I watched it in high school because I had no friends. But, like I watched it in high school and they added a lot more stuff. So it's like they go through their cast of students that do not really change and just sort of give them more things. They're like, you have a problematic food allergy now, and you are also Jewish, and you are I don't know, something that kids will relate to. So they give like all of these characters were like from a kid show, but now they have like lists of things that they are, which like, but also it's very happy. But it's been running for so long.
I feel like maybe I stopped watching Arthur before they had like more than one character trait each.
If you did it before they changed Arthur's voice actor, then yeah.
I would have don't know.
Yeah,
the extent of the characters as I remember is like, she's the nice one, he's the mean one.
Oh no, they have a lot, which is cool.
Cool. They didn't when I watched
They
it.
even played Harry Potter.
You were also probably.
Yeah.
Arthur has
That's
like their
fair.
own Harry Potter series. So they like,
Okay, yeah, but even like what I remember from like Rugrats when I was in elementary school had more depth than Arthur here. Like, I enjoyed Arthur because I didn't care about that in my character.
I feel like just mentioning Harry Potter, I feel like I read a theory where like Harry Potter was Jewish. So like,
I don't know. They have to like explicitly like, this is Christmas dinner. Okay, guys?
yeah, but I mean, you never knew his parents, right?
Yeah,
So like, you never know. Like,
I
I mean, you have the whole like Jew code thing going on. Like, it's all like interpretation, right?
That's a little more of the Star description.
Okay, that's true. That's
Yes. Can you tell I appreciate it?
Anna.
Okay, so 3 things about Harry Potter, I guess.
Yeah, 3 things.
Because Reese needs to mention the the whole Christ reference, Jesus reference in Harry Potter, where he dies to save everyone and comes back to life and things.
Yeah.
But also the entirety of Harry Potter is one big Holocaust reference. But also, like, I feel like every minority group out there has already played Hermione.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They never like say her race, so.
I mean, there's a whole separate thread about like the debates over that, but yeah, a lot of minority groups probably think Hermione, so I don't know.
You never know, guys.
But
You never know.
I mean, this is getting back to the whole like looking for yourself in subtext because you're not explicitly there. Whereas, like you are all saying, everyone who's ever like you skim a Harry Potter book and you know they celebrate Christmas.
Yeah. So yeah, another cool thing to talk about. Look, I'm wearing these shoes that have Wonder Woman on them, which is super cool. And I don't know if you guys have seen the Wonder Woman movie, which I haven't yet actually, which I'm really sad about. But yeah, so like I mean, Wonder Woman is played by an Israeli woman, like Israeli Jewish woman, right? Like I mean, that's pretty. You know, like, and there was some backlash about that. Like there were some like very like anti-Semitic groups were like, we're turning Wonder Woman into the Jew. This is terrible. Blah 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 blah. So like even just having this Israeli actress and like the Jewish woman like playing like Wonder Woman, that led to a lot of backlash. So I mean that's something interesting to think about because that movie came out like last year, this year.
Earlier this, like in the beginning of this year.
Yeah.
What was it?
I thought it was pretty this year. I think it was summer because I started in both see that.
It was the summer.
Yeah.
It feels like longer ago because there's been so many other superhero movies. But yeah. There's one up here.
Just remind us real quick.
Yeah.
The thing with people being mad about is Wonder Woman being this Israeli actress is weird because ScarJo's been in the MCU for years now. Scarlett Johansson.
People are bigots aren't always or even often logical.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then also, I mean, ScarJo's like, I mean, yeah, that's like one thing, but it's just kind of like, oh, she's Jew, I didn't know that, but like, I mean, is it like Gal Gadot? I mean, like, you can't hide that, right? I mean, like.
If I had to guess, aside from just bigots aren't always logical, my best guess would be because Gal Gadot is more like open about being Jewish, whereas like if you didn't already know Scarlett Johansson was Jewish, you wouldn't necessarily guess it.
I learned this now.
Yeah.
Did you have a hand up? Okay. Cool.
I'm glad that I didn't end up having to bring up Rugrats. Someone else already brought it up. I didn't necessarily appreciate it at the time, but like in hindsight, I appreciate that the Rugrats were Jewish because like when I was really little, I just sort of thought that like everyone was represented in some cartoon, and that was like. I'm glad that there was a part of my life where I got to think that.
That's a good point, because like, I mean, I never like saw Jewish characters, and then there would always be like a Christmas special, and I was like, cool, and sometimes it'd be like Hanukkah, and I was like, cool, you know what I'm saying? So like, I mean, that's just another reason, like, why having Jewish representation is important. It's just good, it's good for me.
And also, okay, I can go through. Okay, and
while we're talking about Nickelodeon cartoons, Harold from Hey Arnold had a bar mitzvah once.
Oh.
Once.
Well, there was an episode. There was an episode where he had a bar mitzvah. And it was like the whole episode was.
With the exception of the thing that is generally the maximum number of bar mitzvahs.
So Jared is a Shawnee Jewish.
Oh, no, I get what you meant. I'm sorry for getting drunk.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I remembered. So you guys have probably at least heard of like the American Girl dolls and stuff like that. So when I was younger, they had like their doll of the year who was Lindsay, the Jewish American girl. And, yeah, Lindsay was. I think so. But she was Rebecca. No, Rebecca came later. Lindsay was before that. She was just like she was just like their girl of the year one year, and she was like modern day Jewish, dealing with like all that stuff, but not really dealing with stuff. But it was someone's, I think it was her brother's bar mitzvah coming up, and so like that was what her book was about, and she was like the one Jewish character, the one Jewish American girl, and it was just like that's what she was. Like a lot of them have like a relation to a place or something like that. Like, oh, this is yeah, but it was just like this is the Hawaiian American girl, this is the figure skater American girl, this is the Jewish American girl, until they had Rebecca, until they like were like actually we can have two, which is more fun, but
Wait, you can be Jewish and something else?
only sometimes Rebecca can.
I got so confused with like.
She had a scooter.
Okay, not to derail this too like deeply into politics, but I got really confused when Richard Spencer said you can't be Jewish and white, and I'm really confused. Anyway, going away from politics and back to things from when I was a kid. The only thing other than Rugrats I had that convinced young me that there was actually like a decent amount of Jewish representation in pop culture was we had 2 VHSs of Shalom Sesame. It's the Jewish version of Sesame Street. It does not hold up as well as like the Muppet movies, but I guess it holds up about as well as like non-Jewish Sesame Street, and they have like actual Sesame Street. It's not like knockout Muppets. Like there's like Big Bird and people in that, in addition to like the Muppets that are like unique to that series. But like it was really cool. Like instead of like having this episode brought to you by the letter C, the Pesach episode was brought to you by the Hebrew letter Pei, and they had like bilingual Hebrew English puns. Good time. They had the Hanukkah episode was brought to you by the letter Bet. It was fun. The animation was terrible, but that was also true of real Sesame Street. So.
I feel like Jewish preschoolers are just so much easier to please than Jewish 1-year-olds.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of interesting though, because like the examples that we can think of that are like blatantly Jewish episodes of stuff are like kid shows. Like you get Sesame Street, you get Rugrats, you get Arthur occasionally, which is cool. But then like if the show is geared towards teens or young adults or like not little kids, then you're gonna get it tied in, like smacked on to the end of a Christmas thing.
It's usually more to deal with like poverty like this.
Yeah,
but it's not that people don't want to be religious, because they are very happy to throw in Christmas.
I meant more like avoiding like the holiday thing. I meant more like avoiding avoiding more about people that age don't want to actually think about having to do like religious things.
But that's also not true, because there are plenty of characters in shows that are popular today who go to church.
And then,
like in a lot of the fandoms we were talking about. Yeah.
I don't know that, like whenever shows like Christmas and whatnot, it's not, I mean a lot of times it's not really Christian because there's so many people who celebrate Christmas but they're not even
and that, I mean, that's one thing, right? And that's like totally fine, but then at the same time, I mean, there's a lot of Jewish people who are just like, I'm going to just celebrate Hanukkah, right? So like, why, I mean, and it's just kind of, it's kind of interesting that we don't see that. And then just the other thing that I want to say for that is just, like we see a lot of people like in adult shows and teen shows and any shows, right, who are exploring their cultural identity or their just, their sense of self. And I think one thing that we were really trying to emphasize here is that Judaism isn't just a religion, right? It's also a background, and so like it's like something that can be explored and should be explored and represented in TV shows.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not attacking. I'm just saying, you know, that's just my perspective on it. It's like it's some of it's part of people's identity, right? And so like, why don't we talk about it?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Max. I wasn't just like trying to shut you down, but it is often like in plenty of cases of representation, both in real life and in fiction. Of well, we just don't want to make it religious. We don't want to make it political or this or that. Except if you like, in many cases, maybe not every case, but in most cases, when you look at it, when they're making that excuse, they let it by when it's like representing them. And then when it's another group, is when they don't want to bring it up.
Because they don't have personal experience.
And sorry, I see your hand, but also, like I was saying earlier, Star Trek had a Christmas scene with nothing explicitly religious, but they still had a Christmas scene where, like, whereas they didn't have the equivalent for really any other human religion. Yeah.
So something that I've noticed is Jews are often, I think, super hesitant to portray themselves and to portray Jews when they're writing, Jewish writers. Because then there's this constant fear of, you know, being accused of pushing it on other people or like feeling like you need to write for the mainstream and not necessarily for you. But then you don't really know how to write Jewish characters, which is problematic. So I don't know, we do this not just with like comic books and things, but sometimes
I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say, I wonder how much of the people saying, oh, we don't want to make it religious, but there are still like Christian things in there is because it doesn't occur to them that that's actually a Christian thing that not everybody does.
Oh, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
All the time, right?
People put Christian.
Yeah. John?
I think part of it, my estimate, to do with an over-reliance on Gary shorthand. And like, it's very much easier to go with things that the wider, but like, I don't really want to like say like that a wider audience is going to be familiar with it, but it's like something, when someone talks about like religion in general, it's easier for across by using like imagery for stuff that people that I guess the larger audience would be more identified with, but like that's not necessarily weird. That's the case of the easier path isn't always the right thing.
Yeah, and no, sorry, you stopped saying yeah, no. Yes, you are correct. When, like I mentioned, that Martin Stein gets a one-off line about that confirms that he is Jewish, whereas, and that's the extent of the representation in Flash, whereas a bunch of Flash characters in a recent episode went to a church, and it was just like, yeah, of course they would. Yeah, they used the church because it carried with it enough people in the audience would understand what was going on, why they were at a church, what that meant for the scene, that they wouldn't necessarily know if, like, most people, or many less people who watch The Flash would know why characters are going, why Martin Stein is going to a synagogue or what he intends to do there. But you could also make the argument that a lot less people know what goes on in a synagogue because no shows ever show what goes on in a synagogue. Like I have any idea what was going to happen at the church. By the things that happened at the church because of my consumption of media that shows what happens in church. I have never been to church, like to a real church service in my life, but I have some idea of what goes on there because of how it's represented in the media I consume. So you could then, if other places of worship, not even just synagogues, but other places of worship from various cultures were equally represented in media, I would say that people would have a much better idea of what goes on in synagogues and in other religions' places of worship. But as it stands, I would guess that the number of people who know what goes on in the synagogue is outside of Jews is probably about on par with the number of people who understand Klingon religious ceremonies. Yeah.
Just to add on what you said, high school, we had a language vocabulary word, one of them was synagogue. The question that somebody asked me was, do synagogues have doors?
Yes. Yes, they do.
I'm sorry.
That's
That's wow. What's a story, Mark?
How would you get in or out? Windows?
It's It's one ceiling. Only Jewish representation you get is Star Trek. You think they have transporters? But also, like, what's funny is that is like for you said that was elementary school.
High school.
Oh, high school. Okay. Like within like recently, I was asked like, and to be clear, I am not like criticizing this person. Like, it is better that like you should go into like anytime you want to learn about some culture to which you do not belong and that you have little to no knowledge of. Like, go into it with an open mind and like prepared to. I'm pulling this advice from With Friends Like These, which is a great podcast about like difficult conversations with people who are not like you. It's actually pretty good. But like, go in expecting that you're going to say something wrong, but like prepared to learn from that and learn things you did not know. Preface with that, someone asked me like, so what is the altar like in a Jewish synagogue compared to a church? And I'm like, I'm not sure where to start explaining why I can't directly just answer that question. It was like, so what is the altar like in a synagogue compared to the church? And I'm like, we don't, yeah, I'm like, I can describe like the layout of like tables, like, yeah, like we have like, you know, a lectern that, we don't have, it doesn't work like that. But yeah, like, I kid you not. I like before I tried responding to that, I did like a quick Google image search for like what is the layout of a church.
I've been in a church.
I have
like not like maybe 3 times in my life. I've been at one.
I have been in churches, but I have not. I've been to churches has not been like in the place where like services actually happen. It was like just an event hosted at a church, so I've like briefly seen those things, and I'm not really sure how the services go. Yeah.
This is sort of backtracking a little bit.
This is totally fine.
I Googled things. But in talking about how Jewish writers don't put themselves into their work, Jack Kirby was born Jacob Kurtzberg, and Stan Lee was Stanley Martin Lieber. Two very Jewish names that they both decided to make not so before going into publishing, because otherwise they wouldn't have been able to go into publishing.
Yes, I totally forgot that was in our notes, and then
I couldn't remember what the names were, but
no, yeah. So thank you, because we forgot to mention that earlier. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
You also have John Stewart, who he ended up changing his last name to his middle name, but with a different spelling. But he was.
I think John Leibowitz.
Yeah, John Leibowitz.
Yeah. Like yeah. Cool. But he changed it for different reasons, not to try and like diminish his Jewish identity. Yes, other reasons.
I think that works. Going in a different motive.
Yeah.
Maybe. I could be wrong about that.
Especially since it got
I didn't know if that didn't.
publicized during the.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, for Melvin Kaminsky.
Melvin Kaminsky, yeah. So.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, it's a. it's certainly like a common trend with people who immigrated to America in general, but especially Jews have, especially like Jews from Eastern Europe had longer names that were shortened down to things that you wouldn't connect to their original name. And in many cases, it was because you had to not have a Jewish sounding name if you wanted to work in the area you wanted to work in.
So, sorry, I think we're done here.
Yeah, does anyone else have anything we want to talk about before we wrap things up?
All right, yeah.
All right, yeah, so as Nora was saying before, the point of this is certainly not that we want you to stop consuming media that doesn't have Jews in it, nor is it that every piece of media needs to have Jews, but we hope that you gain a better understanding of the sorts of Jewish influences, Jewish values that was I'm trying to think of the word, that synergize well, to use the business, the business overuse, synergize well with common sci-fi themes and the sorts of Jewish stories that are reflected in a lot of popular science fiction. Thank you very much for sticking with us. Cameron, we can hand it back to you for closing announcements if you want to come up.
Yes. So first of all, let's applaud our runners and Hillel for coming over.
Yeah, thank you again to everyone from Hillel who also came for this, and shout out to people from Hillel who are not here right now, who helped in producing this mission and the research and everything. You guys were a big help.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thanks for stopping by, guys. It was super cool. Also, I'd like to transition into a fun fact for everyone. Duolingo, which is a language learning software, will be adding Klingon soon to its repertoire of languages. So if anyone wants to learn, they can go ahead and do that in an efficient and easy way.
I swear, is it actually going to be released before Japanese comes out of beta? Because then I'm going to Japanese is out. It's in beta. It doesn't have all the features of all the languages.
Anyway, bringing it back to Star, reminder to submit your PowerPoint karaoke PowerPoints if you haven't. The sooner you submit those, the more likely we are to be able to vet them in time. Stop by our committees. PR meets Wednesday nights, approximately below us, and Starfest meets Sunday at noon, approximately behind us. More information will be in the email about those if you're interested. Great Thanksgiving break. We'll see you all next week.